back for this week's sort of like Pokemon Worlds related interview. I'm here this week with 4-time regional champion, 2-time national champion, 3rd place in Worlds 2013. This guy he's been around forever, and his little brother too. Aaron Zheng, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, man.
Yeah, man. I'm so excited to be talking to everybody. This has been a big year for Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And, watching it sort of like come alive a little bit. I know it's been around forever, and just because I'm a, big Pokemon nerd, I've been following it, but watching it be on such a public stage, it's really great to like be able to meet all these faces, because another reason I had you on was because a lot of people who are listening probably already know this, but for the past, 5-6 months, you've also been commentating officially for Pokemon.
Yeah, I have. It's been a very different experience than competing like I have for the last couple of years, but it's really, really fun.
Yeah. I usually ask for a little background, but I'm going to just jump right in because I guess it's going to kind of tie in anyway. Like, how has your experience, because you're how old are you right now?
I'm 18.
Yeah, okay, so you're 18 years old. That is so crazy, dude. Okay, so you've been playing since what, 2012?
2008, actually. Like the very first year competitive VGC was a thing. When the Pokemon Company decided to make a circuit, I was basically involved. So it's really funny because I'm still one of the younger members in the community, but I have I've just been around for so long.
A lot of tournaments under your belt.
Yeah, exactly. I've played every metagame, and so I think that helps a lot. Especially one of the reasons why I wanted to do commentary was because I feel like I have some experience that I can offer.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's actually really true. So you were 10 years old when this started, right? So
yeah.
This is like Babbyist-tron even. The Babbyist-tron there is.
Basically, yeah.
But how has that been transitioning from a childhood fan of Pokemon to working with TPCI?
Yeah. It's crazy. I was just thinking about it, and I remember back when I was in 5th grade, I was looking out the window and I was like, man, it'd be so cool if I could win a regional competition or work for Pokemon one day. And it's just kind of crazy reflecting on it now, because this last summer was incredibly packed. The biggest thing was probably getting to go to E3 with Pokemon and Nintendo, and basically being on the Pokemon Go panel there. And Miyamoto was there, Ishihara was there, and Masuda was there, and just a ton of people. And that for me was wow, I can't believe I'd ever get the opportunity to do this, because these are literally
an amazing selfie.
I was I can't, it's crazy because these are literally the guys who have pioneered and put in so much work for this game, and to promote Pokemon Go too, that was really cool. But if you told me even 2 or 3 years ago that I'd be able to do this and to be a commentator for the events, I would have told you man, that would never happen. But I guess that's just a testament to how much the game has grown, and really how much effort the Pokemon Company is putting into it. So if I had to describe it, it's just humbling, and it's just really amazing.
Yeah. And the other thing that's funny too is do you still because I totally do. I make a show about the nerdiest possible things in Pokemon, but do you still just nerd out about it? Do you still just get excited for news and speculate on the plot of the games and stuff like that? Or has that never been a thing for you that really...
No, that's a great question. I think it definitely was when I was younger, and I feel the past couple of games, I was more obviously just into the competitive side, but that's why Sun and Moon I've been so impressed by, because I feel every new piece of information I'm just freaking out over. I'm no way, I can't believe they just announced this. I think they've done such a good job, I feel with the hype for Sun and Moon, and I keep on saying this, but I really think this next game is just going to be so big for the franchise.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, my dog is going crazy. Hey, Wallace, calm it down. Wallace, calm it down. Hey, come on, it's okay, it's nothing. He gets crazy about the door.
No worries.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels like they're trying to take it to the next level almost, or something. You know what I mean? It feels like, you know what, gyms, forget about it. That's old news, man. Let's take it to the next level. Let's shake out everything old. I'm really excited for what it means for everything, not just competitive, but just the scene of Pokemon.
Yeah, and I feel other games, it would come out, I would kind of grind through it and the story and whatever, just it's whatever, it's fun, but it didn't have that same appeal as when I played it as a kid. But I feel like Sun and Moon like has recaptured that, and I'm just really excited to play the game, like even before the competitive aspect of it, even though I think the competitive aspect is going to be really, really good from what I've seen so far, but I also think just the casual gameplay looks phenomenal. I think a lot of people are just going to want to play Pokemon again from it, so I just couldn't be more excited, and these next 2 months, it's going to be a long wait until it comes out.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I guess now it's the time to ask you just like how did you get involved officially? Like in what aspect? Like, did you reach out to them? Did they reach out to you?
Right. It's a great question. So when they announced basically that they were looking for commentators in 2014, I was actually really interested. And just because I think like commentary has always been something that I've just wanted to do. I think like being on YouTube the last 2 years has definitely added to that,
Right.
just because it's really refined my ability to speak. And there's still so much to improve on, but it's definitely given me a lot of insight. And yeah, to me, it's like, man, it'd be so cool if I could be on the big stage, like offering professional analysis. And because I feel like I know so many of the players in this community really well, I know their backgrounds, and I feel like a storyline is so important to any competitive game or esport. And for Pokemon, I feel like we could develop that more. So when it came to this year, I had qualified for Worlds back in February, and I was fully intending on competing at Nationals and Worlds since I already had my invitation. But the Pokemon company basically reached out to me, and they're like, hey, like, would you be interested in commentating our event for Nationals and Worlds? Basically, like, they lost one of the best guys who, in my opinion, maybe the best commentator, Scott Glaza, who had been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And he works for Pokemon now, and so basically, like, he just didn't have time to manage working at these events while also be a commentator. So losing him was a big deal, and then Shady Penguin wasn't able to return either. And so they were down people. Justin Flynn, he had health issues, I believe. So
Yeah.
basically, like, 3 of the 5 members from the previous casting team wasn't even able to return, and so that was a big issue for them. And they've really needed more people. And so for Nationals, felt like it was like, okay, I wanted to do it a lot. It was always a dream of mine, and I guess the timing just worked out. They also really needed someone, so when they invited me, I said, sure, why not? I get to help out the community and live out something that I've always wanted to do. For Worlds, it was definitely, I think, a really hard decision because, giving up the chance to win Worlds every year is kind of a big deal, even if you have a slim chance, right? There's that slim chance, and for me, that's still a dream that I'm working towards. But this year, I felt like I didn't play as much as previous years. I didn't practice as much. I was really busy over the summer, and so it just made sense. And to be able to commentate Worlds, I think like I couldn't have chosen a better Worlds to commentate since like
Oh man, yeah.
all my friends just did really well. There were so many great storylines. I think like Wolfie winning, like I couldn't have asked for a better finals. Like I know Jonathan and Wolfie pretty well too, and so it was like, wow, I get to commentate 2 people that I'm close to. And obviously I try to be unbiased when it comes to commentary, but for me, I think it just naturally makes me more excited about the games because I know these guys well and I want to see them do well. And so Worlds was such a blast. But all in all, I mean, basically they reached out to me and I was like, why the heck not? Like I've always wanted to do this, so I'm really grateful that they gave me the opportunity.
Did you have to take like some sort of like class or like like this is how the headset works, like this is this, or is it more just like about Pokemon, right? Go talk.
Yeah. So I was expecting like me and my partners to like, get in some practice or whatever, but I think the best thing about the commentary teams this year was that like I'm really good friends with everyone on the team. Like
that's what I was gonna say. You guys are all like younger than most people who do this type of job, but like there was like something in the water this year because it's like you and all the people that who've been doing this for years, even though you're like relatively young people, and then like the competitors, it's like the same scene. It was just like if you had to do this cold out of nowhere, doing it with like the people that the way they play so much because you just played them last year, it's just like so interesting. It must be really surreal.
It is, and I think it's a really good point too, because commentary isn't just a one-person job, right? You have, for Pokemon at least, it's always 2 people. Other games, sometimes have 3 people, but you really need to be able to mesh well with your co-commentator. And for Nationals and Worlds, like I couldn't have asked for a better cast of guys. Like that was literally like some of the greatest guys I could have worked with because we've all been friends for a long time already, and they're really good at what they do, whether it's play-by-play or color. And so that's why like we didn't like need to practice with each other or whatever. It's just when the events came, it was just really natural. I feel like they're obviously more refined because they've done more official commentary, but I think having the YouTube experience definitely helped out a lot. You know, I've casted a lot of like smaller events or kind of grassroots events, so it's not like I didn't know what to do. And when you're able to work with friends who, you know, also are very professional, you're able to build off it and kind of learn on the spot. And I definitely think, you know, I still have a long way to go in terms of being a really good commentator, but you know, just throughout each event, I feel like I just pick up everything more and more with each game that I commentate.
Yeah, are you starting to like pick up some sort of like style preferences and like sort of like you know, the way you think things should be done? Like, are you starting to form in your mind like what makes a good commentator yet? Do you have like icons? What's going on there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And part of it is definitely inspired by Scott Glaza and Evan Ladd, actually, because they commentated my 2013 Worlds like semi-final set and my brother's final set. And that year meant so much to me as a player, since both my brother and I did pretty well. And so that was really cool. And I like actually remember like just specific phrases that they said. And I actually like used one of the phrases during Worlds this year, and Scott was like laughing. He was like, I can't believe he gave me like that reference. Like, that's awesome. So, you know, I think like everyone has their own distinct kind of style. And for me, this year, what I try to do is really just hype things up. Not that they're not hype, but, you know, you have your like kind of fake hype. It's just like people screaming at whatever. And then you have like hype that's genuine. And
you're trying to keep that personal connection for the audience to keep them invested in the outcome of the match. Yeah,
exactly. And I feel like, you know, for Pokemon, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes because you're just sitting there waiting for 45 seconds for someone to make a play. And so it's like, when that big play happens, you know, let's make it exciting. Let's have a good time with it.
There's a lot of room for color in like a lot of the video game commentary scenes.
Yeah. And well, sorry to interrupt you there. I think one of the really cool things about Pokemon as a game actually is because it's turn-based, like you don't struggle as much about like, oh, when do I do the play-by-play, when I do the color, because for other games it's like there's always action happening, so it's really hard to like describe to a new person on the stream like this is exactly what's happening, this is the professional analysis behind it. So our roles as play-by-play and color are pretty defined, and I think that makes things a little bit easier for both me and my partners.
Yeah. Are you like a sports guy outside of Pokemon? Do you watch a lot of like, you know, television commentary like on ESPN or whatnot?
Yeah, I do watch a lot of basketball. So, you know, draw some insight from that. But also I think esports is a pretty good parallel, right? Like I watch a lot of Super Smash Bros. And League of Legends. And I think one of the coolest things actually about being a Pokemon caster this year is that they had like 3 of the best Smash casters as the Pokken casters.
Yeah.
And so like it was crazy. I was like, man, like I've looked up to a lot of these guys, like especially D1 for so long. And here I am like on the same team with him. Guy. Yeah, it was like, man, like I was fanboying so hard when I met him, and he's like the nicest guy. DC and Vish too, you know, I see them on like Smash 4 and Melee streams all the time, and so it was like that's so cool because I've learned literally from these guys just from watching these other games, and now I am on the same like team working with them.
Yeah. Do you feel like let's talk about that FGC sort of like connection a little bit more? Do you feel like there's like connection between Pokemon and the other esports that there are out there, or do you feel like Pokemon, because of its sort of like, it's got sort of like a kid angle to it as well? Like, do you think there's like a separation there? Do you feel like, you know, oh, you're like a Pokemon esports guy, that's not like real esports, or like, do you feel like it is?
Right. It's also a really good question. I mean, I think if there was like one game you could kind of similar, maybe people playing or fan bases, maybe Smash Bros. And the reason why I say that is I think I've met through Pokemon, actually I've been able to meet a lot of pro Smash players, which is really cool. Some of them have interests in it too. I know like ESAM, who's, you know, one of the best Smash 4 players, was actually watching Worlds and like tweeting about it, and I was like, oh man, that's really hype. And I think like, you know, obviously they're both Nintendo run games. I think Pokemon as a game is just so different from every competitive game, which is why I'm really hopeful for it as a competitive game and as an esport. You know, you can draw parallels to Hearthstone, obviously, because they're kind of RNG based and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, I do think Pokemon's very separate because, you know, we have different age groups and we encourage like kids under 10 or kids from 11 to 14 to play. And I think that's important for the game too. And, you know, there's definitely still so much we have to do and then a long way it can go. But I think that's what makes me so excited because like I remember playing my first tournament in 2008 and that was like, you know, the smallest thing ever. And now we have world championships with thousands of people and more prize money on the line. This next year is just going to be so big with Sun and Moon and even better prizing. So, you know, I think there's just so much more that the game has to offer. And I'm really excited to see what direction we go in.
Yeah. Plus it's in Anaheim. So I just have to drive there.
I'm so excited about that.
It's going to be so hype. I saw you tweeting the other day that you were feeling that itch that you're gonna go back and that maybe you're gonna do Worlds again next year.
Right.
I was wondering if you stand by that, or I don't know. Like, I was kind of talking to Wolf about this too, about like kind of like growing older as a Pokemon community person. You know, because I'm almost 30, right? Like I'm a pretty old dude, and I notice like there isn't really an upwards age limit on Masters division, you know, but like you never see anybody who's I don't even know if you ever see anybody who's over 30. And so I'm wondering, like, do you see yourself like transitioning towards like doing more stuff like commentating, or do you plan on battling and competing at least in some capacity as you get older? Because I mean, you're also interning somewhere very prestigious. I don't remember where it was, but it's a pretty cool internship that you had, right?
Yeah. So I got to work at Bloomberg this last summer, which was really awesome. But I think one of the interesting things is like there's like the Pokemon side of my life, and then there's like the college side of my life, you know, just the regular me. And, you know, I'm trying to develop both of those more, obviously. And I like to keep those separate. But, you know, I think at some point, you know, they'll probably align more, whether it's like me working at Pokemon or me. I think one of my goals, I really love esports, and so like I do want to work in esports eventually, whether it be with Nintendo or Pokemon or, you know, different company like Riot or Blizzard or something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, I think to answer your question, one of the interesting things about our game is that unlike, you know, other games that require technical skill, like your hands need to be able to move at, or you need to be able to make X movements per second. Like Pokemon is all just about like mind games and kind of just crafting and theorying and just being able to think well. So theoretically, you know, you could play this game as long as it's around competitively, you know, no matter how old you are, and you could be very good at it. But I think like for me, winning Worlds is still like the one thing I haven't done in the game, and that's like the one thing that would solidify my position, you know, among like Ray, Wolfie, and Sejun. And those are my friends, and I've looked up to them for a long time. And, you know, I want to be able to say like I'm in that group, and it's not, you know, it gets harder every year, and I know the challenge that's ahead. But yeah, the reason why I said I wanted to play next year was because, you know, first of all, I saw Wolfie win, and you know, I've always seen Wolfie like kind of a step above me, but we've always been really good friends. I've looked up to him for a long time. We've worked together for multiple years before.
He's another guy who's been around just forever.
Yeah. And, you know, for so long, like, neither of us were able to win Worlds. Like, we had both come so close. He got second before, I got third before. We both made it to top 8 before and lost as well. And so, like, and this year, you know, he had like a really bad nationals, and I was like, man, it would be crazy if he won this year, because it's like everything stacked against him. And then he goes off and has like this incredible team and plays so well. And to me, it's like, that's what reaffirmed, like, you know, it's possible. Because for a long time, I thought like maybe it's just too hard now. But if, you know, Wolf can pull it off, then that's really inspirational to me. Yeah. And so, like, you know, I want to give it a not one last shot, but I still want to keep on trying. But
yeah, I mean, you're 18. You got some time.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I think it's like, if I look at my mentality approaching the last 2 World Championships, like in 2014, I was 18th place. I had a 4-2 record, so I needed one more win to make the top 8, but wasn't able to close it off. And then 2015, I was like 4-3, so that year was like 1 win, potentially needed 2 wins basically. But yeah, both years, like I was 3-1 going into the last round. I just needed to win the last couple, and I wasn't able to pull it off. I think my team choices maybe could have been a little bit better, so I, you know, kind of want to change how I approach building teams and testing when it comes to tournaments. But just seeing the amount of prep that people put in for this last World Championship, like it was a lot of prep, but it was also like preparation well done. And so I think like this next season, I'm going to try to approach like preparing for tournaments a little bit better, because in the past I've just relied on like my ability to play. And, you know, that's good, but people are getting better now, so you have to be aware of that.
Not to mention, like, who knows what the meta is going to look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, that's a big deal. I think, like, running a YouTube channel that a lot of people watch makes things a little bit more challenging, right? Because it's like, if I use a strategy, everyone will see it. And so sometimes it's like, oh, I can be lazy and use the same team that I used on YouTube. But then if I run into anyone who's watched my videos, then it can work against me. So, you know, this next season is going to be about how do I like keep up a consistent YouTube channel while also like, you know, figuring out new strategies.
I think about how to make a consistent and good YouTube channel every day of my life. Well, let me ask you this question then, maybe just a little bit more directly. What do you think about the way the meta has been changing?
Yeah. So I think like this World Championship was just incredibly cool to see from a spectator's view, because, you know, so many top players were like, oh, I don't know if we can figure it out. Like this whole Groudon Xerneas core is just so good. Like we even saw at U.S. Nationals, right? There were a couple of like Ryogre teams that made it to the top, but it was still Groudon Xerneas in the finals. And there was always some creative stuff here and there, but this World Championships like blew me. Like it
first
just
and third place weren't chalk.
Yeah,
it's like crazy.
Exactly, and so it's like you saw Ryogre, like Wolf's team is one of the best teams I've ever seen just in competitive Pokemon, but there are a lot of other really good teams. A lot of Rayquaza Xerneas compositions, which are really cool. Barry Anderson, who was in the top 8, had a really cool Rayquaza Xerneas composition. He had like Red Card Volcarona, and there were just all kinds of crazy Pokemon that were in like the very top of the play, like Arcanine, Gyarados. If you told me these Pokemon would be in like the top cut of Worlds, especially looking at the metagame right before Worlds, I would have been like, oh, no way. So it was really cool because it showed that the top players still have so much innovation, and that like people always like are discouraged, but I think like this should encourage people to be less lazy and complacent and try to, break the metagame more often, because
there was so much more variety this year, just in general across the board.
Yeah, and I think like people look at 2015 and they're like, oh, competitive Pokemon's so undiverse, but like that year, if you just had a top 16 instead of a top 8, 9 through 16 all had incredibly diverse and unique teams, and so that's one of the reasons why I was really excited for a larger top cut this year, just because there was more representation. So in general, yeah, I think like competitive Pokemon, it can get a little bit stale, and I still would like to see certain things that are maybe just too broken or overpowered or centralizing, like whether it's banned or just kind of toning them down. I think like we don't have balance patches, which is something that obviously like most other competitive games have, so that makes things a little bit trickier. But in the end,
could though is the thing.
Yeah, and so I'm like, oh, it would be so cool for Sun and Moon, like just because it's possible, right? Like why not?
Totally possible. And I talk about this with people a lot. Is like, people are kind of up in arms about the restricted Pokemon, like, all the big guns being available to us this year.
Yeah.
And I sort of think about it like, well, you look at LCS or something and how they like just sort of like mix it up each year with the rules just a little bit, just to like make it a little bit more interesting. And I wonder if what we were looking at this year was sort of like a themed meta around the idea of the Pokemon 20, like legendary heavy sort of like year, or if that's, I wonder if that's how they intend to go forward with the meta, or if they're going to, focus on something totally different this in 2017.
Right. So from my perspective, I think like, with these rule sets, I'm fine with whatever year. I didn't like this year too much because of certain reasons. Although in the end, I was like, that's probably on me. Like I could have figured out better ways to beat those Pokemon or teams that I was, didn't have too much fun playing against. But in my eyes, this year, I think definitely part of it was the 20 kind of anniversary, all legendary giveaway kind of deal. But also just like, we were still playing on Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, and like what better way to advertise those games than using the cover Pokemon. But I do think that in the future, I wouldn't mind seeing just like all legendary Pokemon being banned, just because I think from a spectator's perspective, people just like hate legendary Pokemon for whatever reason, because they think like
cheap. It seems like whatever it is, like you don't think about it in terms of like, well, like these are the rules, and like let's give honor and glory to the people who do it well.
Exactly.
Let's actually just be like, oh, Mewtwo's a cheater Pokemon.
Right. And I guess like that's one of the more frustrating things, because there's so much skill for a lot of these teams and a lot of these Pokemon. Like, yeah, they're legendary, they're really good, but you still have to play well with them, right? Like I don't think people give just players enough credit, because there's so many phenomenal players, and yes, they have legendaries on their teams or strong Pokemon that you might not like, but like, They used it because they're trying to win and because they figured out strategies behind it. But I think like if you took away the legendary Pokemon, us as competitive players, we'd be fine, because, we can figure out new strategies or whatever, and it makes spectating maybe a little bit better. So for me, I think like this year, I just turned away a lot of people from spectating, because naturally people who don't know the game are like, oh my god, Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Xerneas, it's so cheap. Like how does this take any skill? Everyone's using the same stuff. And so it's like naturally if you take that away, people will just be more inclined to watch. So whether they do that or not, I'm not sure. I think 2017, everyone's kind of expecting Alola decks only, because in previous years, like in 2011, it was Unova decks only, 2014, Kalos decks only, where it was like you only had like 150 Pokemon. Those actually resulted in really cool World Championships. Like Pachirisu won, in 2014.
Right. It was great.
And there were less legendary Pokemon allowed those years too. So I think like next year, whether they allow legendaries or not, I mean, there's still so many things we don't know, like Z moves and whether megas are really a thing or not. So that's all
crazy. Like Kangaskhan, like get him out. Like let's we did it. It's been years. Let's get rid of it.
And I think like a lot of players would actually like we wouldn't mind seeing megas going away, but at the end of the day, like we can't choose what rule set we play under when it comes to VGC, so it's just like adapting and learning what it is. But when I think about growing the game as a esport and as a competitive game and looking at it from a spectator's perspective, I think like if you want to just more people watching your game, it's kind of better if you tone down the legendaries, and so like at the end of the day, they're not losing out on much because the competitive players aren't going to really be complaining, and then that way more casual players can watch and be into it.
Yeah, I think also it'll help if they get rid of legendaries this year, because I'm always that way, right? Like I play Smogon, back in the day. Like when I was in college in 2000 and I was playing a lot of Diamond and Pearl, and I was like totally like, not doing well in my classes because I was so into like just training teams for Smogon OU, and I would be so disdainful of the people who are, just using, well, technically this legendary is legal, like he's legal within the meta, and it's like, I know that, but then like, you realize like, if I'm gonna be the guy who like decides that I'm not gonna use legendaries, if that's like gonna be like a restriction I'm gonna just put on myself, I can't be mad at other people who are just following the rules of the game.
Exactly.
And I think that should be the way we all think about it. I wonder if there's a way that we can get, the people who don't know as much about the game to feel that way. But I don't know. It's just so interesting. Like I was talking to Wolf about how nobody watching, like such a small percentage of the people watching Pokemon have as much understanding of the game as the people who are playing it, or even just like everyone in the room at the tournament versus like everyone watching on the stream. It's like a very different level of knowledge about it. And I think like getting legendaries out of there and putting faces like Snorlax or Raticate back in the mix, you know what I mean, are going to be a lot. They're going to do a lot towards getting everybody hype. So hopefully that's kind of like what the plan is. But I really don't know.
Yeah, I think like, no one really does, but so far it's just like everything from Sun and Moon has looked really promising. And I guess what's hard for us is that as players who want to see the game grow, like we kind of depend on the fundamentals of the game, right? If there are mechanics that are too broken, like we can't do anything about that. That's just on the company to fix it. So I'm really hoping that they do Sun and Moon correctly, because every year it's like we make so much progress, but there are a couple of things that it's like, oh, if we could just fix these, it'd be so great, which is why I think patches would still be really core, the ability to, just like tone down certain moves for Pokemon. But all in all, I think like, yeah, this next year is going to be so big. And I just, I really hope that just more people get into the game and more people watch, because I think like competitive Pokemon has so much depth as a game, and it's one of the few, if not the only competitive game or esport where you can literally tell someone like you can be a world caliber player within a year. Like you can't do that really in any other game.
Right.
And I think like the accessibility is just so good, and it's been harder obviously because previous generations it's harder to get your Pokemon in game, it's harder to breed, but now with Sun and Moon, they look like they're really just trying to make it as easy as possible for the barriers to entry, and so that's a big deal. And the tournaments are going to be bigger than ever next year, so I'm just so excited to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I hope people play more. I want to see people pick up the game more.
Exactly.
Awesome. So I guess the last thing I want to talk about is just like, what you have to say to people out there. I want to be able to have this interview be a place people can come watch and be like, oh, like I wonder, like, this guy's been on both sides of competitive Pokemon now. He's been on the media side. He's been on the competitive side. Like, going forward, like, what are the words of wisdom or like the welcoming words to people who are just now joining the Pokemon community? Because I feel like the Dex has been around for a long time, and for us this year has been all about like integrating ourselves a little bit more into the community at large. And so I'm trying to create sort of like a bridge for people from this casual, people who maybe haven't touched Pokemon since Pokemon Go, back to Red version, maybe they played it when they were kids. But they're back now. Like, what do you have to say to those people to like, imagine like Willy Wonka, look at me. like what's your like word of advice to get the most out of Pokemon?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing I'd say is like a lot of people just don't realize like competitive VGC specifically is the thing, but just competitive Pokemon in general. And the trading card game is a really cool game too. But yeah, like the fact that there is a competitive aspect to it, like to anyone who hasn't seen it or heard about it before, like you should definitely try it out. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about the scene as well. To me, the Pokemon community is one of the best, if not the best community I've ever been part of. I've met just so many incredible people. I've heard so many different stories, and that to me has been really important to me, even outside of Pokemon, just like personal life development. And so that's a big deal as well. And so like, I encourage people to get into it. I encourage people to, you know, support people that they enjoy watching. Like, just check out the competitive scene, especially VGC, obviously. Check out the streams. There should be even more next year. Like, next year is just going to be so big for the game, and getting into it should be easier. I know I'm going to do my part as a YouTuber just to, you know, make more introductory content so that people can get into it a little bit easier. And so hopefully that's a little bit more dynamic and exciting. But yeah, I mean, just like, honestly, if you want to do it, like whether you want to be a competitive player or whether you want to be a commentator, like it's all possible. Like as a kid, I never would have imagined any of this, but if you just work hard towards it, as cliche as it sounds, like I think it's just really obtainable.
Yeah, Pokemon, as mysterious of a company as it is very like Willy Wonka-y about that type of thing. Like you too can be a part of Pokemon, and it's like totally true.
Yeah, and I think that's like what makes VGC and TCG and, you know, all the competitive sides like so exciting, because like we say this on the World stream. I know as a commentator, I was like you literally could be on stream here next year with us, and it's like you can't say that really for the majority of any other competitive games. And so like I really encourage people, even if you're not playing, just to watch the streams, because I think next year is going to be really exciting, even from a spectator's perspective.
Yeah, I'm gonna get involved. I'm gonna try and do some competition. I'm gonna try and participate a little bit. A little bit. I gotta. You know, if I'm gonna talk about battle strategy every single week, I gotta put up or shut up, right? A little bit.
If you want to train, man, just hit me up. I'm always here.
Everybody's always saying this to me, like people that I look up to and have been watching play Pokemon for years, and I'm just like, ah.
I mean it though. Yeah, I mean like, I think for me it's just so rewarding having been here since 2008, seeing so many new people get into it, seeing you know, these big personalities be interested in it. So it's really cool that you have an interest in it, and you know, I just want to do my best to get more people into it, because that's the whole reason why I started my channel like 2 years ago.
Great. Aaron Zheng, the one and only CYBERTRON, you guys. I don't know, you still use that handle pretty regularly, CYBERTRON?
Yep, that's what I go by.
Sweet. Yeah, check him out. YouTube.com/CybertronVGC, right?
CyberTron Productions on YouTube.
CyberTron Productions. Okay, the link's going to be in the description. You can click that if you want to go check out. You do a lot of like, you do roads to ranked or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's mainly like battle play, but I think once Sun and Moon comes out, it's going to be like so much more comprehensive, like how to get into VGC or competitive play, you know, how to build a team. It's me building teams, individual Pokemon guides. That's the goal, at least. You know, I always say I want to do it and then like end up getting really busy, but I think like I really want to dedicate myself a little bit more to this next season, because I think it's going to be the biggest growth possible for the game.
Yeah, man. So yeah, maybe we'll do some more stuff. Maybe we'll hook up and do some cool stuff for the community, something fun.
For sure.
Yeah. Guys, this has been Aaron Zheng. Next week, we're going to go from VGC over to TCG. Hopefully, I can still get Jaywitz on, but I'm going to do a couple more interviews like this every Thursday. You can check it out. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can also check it out on the podcast feed. If you're listening on the podcast feed, you can also check it out on YouTube. Anything else that you want to point your these people that are listening to us to?
Oh, sorry, I totally missed that.
No, it's okay. Is there anything else that you want to give a little love to on the interview here? Just shout out before we go.
Yeah, my social media, check me out. I do a lot of fun VGC stuff, CyberTron Productions on YouTube and CyberTron VGC on Twitter. And there's actually one site in particular that's actually trying to make new VGC content that I hope more people kind of get into, because they're just starting out. And there's some really fun stuff there, and I think like we just don't have enough VGC content. And so that's Saffron City Post. That's their Twitter, basically Saffron City Post, no spaces. And they have a website as well. They're like the first website that's just trying to dedicate themselves to basically like competitive and exclusive VGC content. So I'd highly recommend that. Nugget Bridge as well is just a site that's been around for a long time. It's not used as much, but there's a lot of old articles and resources, like a lot of ex-war champions had stuff on there, a lot of top team analyses and articles, and so I definitely would recommend that as well.
Dope. That's like some actual helpful, good resources for people. Awesome. Thanks again for jumping on and doing a quick interview with me. I know you are a busy man, as am I. It's always nice to be able to get together and talk to somebody new. But yeah, I will see you around. We will see all of you around as well out there. And yeah, thanks for coming, man.
Thanks for having me.
Great. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.